Welcome to the Unfinished Business Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Mulvin. This is a show where I interview CEOs, visionaries, leaders, and creatives who are out changing the world through business, through their organization, or through leadership. Because it doesn't matter who you are or what you have accomplished. Even someone like Henry Ford still had something he wanted to accomplish and do with his business. And so we explore those stories today on Unfinished Business with Eric Mulvin.
Unfinished business. Where people in tech connect to amplify. Unfinished business. Human intelligence plus AI. Unfinished business. Moonshot goals that launch you high. Unfinished business. Listen close and you'll learn why.
This episode is brought to you by PackBiz Outsourcing. PackBiz helps NEMT providers run more reliable operations with dedicated remote support teams in the Philippines. From scheduling and trip planning to broker calls, rider updates, trip checks, and reports, PackBiz works within your processes to help cut missed calls, improve dispatch flow, and make better use of your fleet. PackBiz is also building AI-powered QA tools that help NEMT companies spot coaching needs faster and improve call performance with clearer insights. To learn more about how PackBiz supports NEMT companies, visit our website, pack-biz.com, or you can give us a call Monday through Friday during business hours at 480-771-3009. All right, without further ado, today's guest, he is the CEO of MediRoutes, one of the nation's leading software providers in non-emergency medical transportation. His career has been built at the intersection of enterprise software and healthcare with a focus on building products, leading teams, and using data to make better decisions. He's been with MediRoutes for over 8 years and has previously worked with Vanguard, Banner Health, and Salom Consulting, and has served on the NEMT advisory board since 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome David Reinkensmeyer.
Thanks, Eric. Great to be here, man.
Great
It's a
to have
pleasure.
you. Awesome. I'm so excited. We've gotten to know each other over the years for a couple years now.
Yeah. I think the first time I met you, you held a microphone like this up to me, and I took a pair of socks from you with taxi cabs on them. So that was a good day.
That's, been at least, I think it was 2022.
Okay.
You're up to date when that was.
Sounds right. Yeah. It's great to be here, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the people who are watching here today and don't know MediRoutes or much about NEMT possibly, I want you to explain to the audience, what is it you do? And what is MediRoutes?
Oh, sure. Yeah, just for those that don't know, NEMT, non-emergency medical transport. We like to joke it's sort of the redheaded stepchild of healthcare, which, it gives it a tough position to, it's really that intersection between, there's ambulances up here doing a lot of emergency work. There's Ubers and taxis down here doing, curb to curb work. And then there's this whole world in between where medical patients need to get to a dialysis appointment, a methadone clinic, a preventative care appointment. And, maybe they could take a bus or maybe they can't. And if they can't, they may need help with a wheelchair, accessible van, that kind of thing. So we serve about 800 plus transportation providing fleets across the United States who specialize specifically in non-emergency medical transportation. And so we build routing, scheduling, dispatching, billing, and automation software to hopefully, make their days a little bit easier and make it easier for them to serve the riding public, these passengers who many of them are, Medicaid, Medicare recipients, or even private health insurance, recipients. So all in the name of preventative healthcare.
Cool. And there's a lot to go into there, a lot of angles you could talk about from
Sure.
what you guys cover. But I think a lot of people, they've been familiar with taxis or familiar with Uber, but I think unless you had to interact with an NEMT company, you probably have no idea there's a whole world out there, a whole industry that people don't know exists, right?
Yeah, I mean, even myself, I think back to when I was working at Slalom Consulting about 8.5 years ago, and I was actually working on the contract with Banner Health for a year or two, and we were working on a provider, scheduling platform, and we were so enthralled with booking the appointment for the provider and getting it all digitized. And I ran into this gentleman on the tennis court. We started talking, and he introduced me to MediRoutes and actually introduced me to NEMT. I didn't even know what the concept really was at that point, even though I was working at a major healthcare provider, working in software, working on appointment booking. So yeah, I do think it's a kind of a niche field we're in, and really glad to be serving the public doing it.
So that's an interesting way how you landed in this space. And I didn't realize that. So, because
Yeah.
I mean, today you're CEO, you're running the company, you got
Sure.
800 plus customers, but you didn't start out running the company.
No, no, yeah, I was brought in. I was introduced to the founder. Would that be early 2018? We got lunch, kind of saw the office. So they had a couple developers at, and then one support guy who's still with us, Scott Thomas. Hi, Scott, if you're on. And I think maybe just a couple training staff across the country. So it's a pretty small outfit at the time. And once I kind of learned a little bit about what Steve Smith, the founder, had been doing, he had worked at Trapeze for a long time, which is a paratransit software company, and he had kind of tried to retire from Trapeze, start his own company, and originally I think was doing pool maintenance scheduling, and eventually, got sucked right back into NEMT, which is kind of a sister to paratransit. So, yeah, when I met him, I think they had probably 150, 200 clients maybe using the application. So he definitely had proved a lot there. And they were really, I think Steve was at the age where he was saying, I'm in my mid to late 50s. I'm ready to get off the keyboard. I've been writing code for 40 years now, 35 years. And so when, I saw the opportunity to jump from the consulting firm, which at the consulting firm, I'd had the rug pulled out for me a few times where you're on a project and, whether it's your own doing or usually not, right? Just something with a company that is sponsoring it, oh, like our CapEx dried up this year, whatever the answer is, your project might get pulled. And so the idea of going to a company where you're working in healthcare, hopefully helping the world out a little bit and being able to work in software and theoretically hang on to a product for many years, which, here I am 8 years later going strong. So that's how I came in, was the director of product development. And I was tasked with getting Steve off the keyboard. He is off the keyboard now, unless he gets bored and wants to pop in on a project. But yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. Now we're about 25 staff, and yeah, like I said, about 800 clients nationwide. And last year, about 16 million NEMT trips went through our software. So about $850 million of non-emergency medical transport was managed using MediRoutes for their routing and dispatching. Yeah, it's been a fun ride, man.
Pretty significant. Well, congrats on that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really credit to the team. We're just and the clients. They're doing the hard work. We just get a lot of good feedback from them, put it into action through the software. So we enjoy it every day.
So, what position did you get in the company? Where did you get started?
Yeah, so I started, like, they called it director of product development, which was really more of like a product owner role. And so my ask to the founder, was basically let me make a few hires, give me a little bit of budget. So every, other week we can show you what we built. We call that a sprint with a sprint demo.
Yeah.
And when we show you what we build at 9 a.m., then at noon, I want to take the team out. We're going to have lunch. We're going to go, bowling, top golf, whatever it is. Give these programmers a break. And so, yeah, when my job when I came in was really, I think of it as still to this day, but as a servant leader, just try to, help out with asking questions, writing documentation, helping test the application, interviewing clients, interviewing staff members, listening to the support calls, working with our support and training team to figure out what are our clients asking for, why are they asking for it, can we build that in software, or can we give them better documentation or tools to do it easier, and then kind of just feeding that back into a roadmap for the company, or the product side at least of the company. And I was in that position for several years. So they built the team out to maybe 8 or so folks on the development team, and just helped try to get some processes in there, and learned a lot along the way. And then, yeah, the founder asked me to just kind of step up and do a little bit more. So worked as the COO for a short stint. I'm not the best operations guy. Shout out to Morgan Landry, who's helping us with that. And then more recently, title change, small company, but yeah, currently serving as a CEO, and very, very happy to be at the helm. Yeah.
So a lot of people watching the show, we really target business leaders.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people maybe end up in positions they never thought they'd be in. Is that you as well?
Yeah, I can't tell you when I was, I don't know what I was at the time, but working as a consultant at Slalom, got a lunch with Steve, the founder of MediRoutes. I never thought I'd be in a position to call myself CEO. So it's very humbling, to be honest. But yeah, I always knew I just like to ask good questions, learn new things, and then I really do like building out a team. So I think that's been Steve's put a lot of trust in me over the years to build out a good team, and of course made some missteps over the years too. But enough of the hires have been well enough thought out. We've had good success trying to keep the team together, and so through that, yeah, I think he's just said take on more, and so. Yeah, like I said, small company titles are weird. Really having a lot of fun doing it.
That's awesome. And then talk to me a little bit about the NEMT space, because I know that's been growing dramatically, especially like when I first started my first business was a taxi cab company in 2011.
Oh yeah.
And I know I actually one of my first mentors, and I can't recall the name. I'd give you a shout out, QTS Transport,
Oh
and it was through Score,
yeah.
and he was helping me out. I was very early on, and I didn't know anything about NEMT. I'm just like, man, you got these old vans that needed to be updated a little bit at the time. But that was my exposure to it, and I haven't like it wasn't until maybe 20 around the time you got involved with MediRoutes that it started becoming a bigger and bigger deal. So tell us about the what's been happening in the industry, leading up to like how did it get started? How did this blow up? I guess let's start with that.
Yeah, good question. And I think QTS is a client of ours, if I'm not mistaken. That's very small world there.
And I want to say his name was Steve. I don't know if I made another Steve.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I
It's been like
apologize.
15 years.
I don't know the name off the top of my head either, but yeah, and I still think of myself as a student, just in general, and who have NEMT as well. Coming from the software world with some healthcare experience, it's been trial by fire into NEMT, just trying to figure out. You think of it as like, oh, it's the Uber of healthcare, which I guess there is an Uber Health for that, but it's just so much more complicated. When you take an Uber, somebody pulls out a credit card, they pull out their phone app, put the credit card on the app, they click "Get me a car." Some driver just drives there, and they get an alert. And so you have Uber, you've got the driver, and you got the passenger, and Uber's just kind of making the market. It's a marketplace. NEMT has just so many layers between who's actually paying for the transportation and who's receiving it, and who's providing it. And so we see it with our clients, who have fleets and a team of drivers and maybe some dispatchers to help manage all that, and the call center efforts, because it might not be as tech savvy of users as an Uber or a Waymo or a Lyft app is. And so, yeah, to talk about the whole history, I'm not sure if I'm the right guy, but yeah, my understanding is that as through the Affordable Care Act, as preventative care became a bigger and bigger focus for our government dollars, basically saying, hey, if we could spend money now, and if it's $30, $50 a ride to get a passenger to a healthcare appointment, or a patient really to a healthcare appointment, that might save us a $20,000 ER bill as a society. And so, I think that the social determinants of health, one of them being, can you get to the actual, physicals, and can you get to your PCP appointments? Can you get to your, whatever it is, oncology appointments? And so, my understanding is that that's kind of when the ball got rolling pretty heavily. Not to say there wasn't any MT prior, but I think a lot more efforts were made towards it at that time. And then, frankly, I mean, you bring up the taxi industry. We both go to that TTA, the Transportation Alliance, annually, and I think both of us, are involved in that organization to varying degrees. But my understanding, talking to a lot of those taxi cab folks, is that once Uber and Lyft came into the market, pretty much overnight, their taxi business was dead. And so for them to be able to swim upstream to maybe white glove services like limos, or higher levels of service, especially in the medical field, through non-emergency medical transportation, it was a big opportunity for those folks that had invested a lot of time in drivers, vehicles, operational
They have
etiquette.
facilities. They have a lot of them run maintenance shops, like a full on repair shop
Yeah,
that can fix and maintain all the vehicles. And so, yeah, it's a lot of infrastructure to just throw away. So, a lot of these guys, I mean, these are, I don't know if it's like this in any MT space as well, but I know in taxi,
yeah,
heavily, multi-generation family businesses that have been around 50, 100 years, some of them.
yeah.
And so, like, the last thing you want to do is be the one like killing off that legacy. How can we keep this business going? So pivot into NEMT.
Oh,
And I've seen that a lot with some of our clients where they've acquired NEMT companies or just straight entered the space over the last couple of years. What have you seen over the last like couple years? What are some trends happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe from a side that you could view it as negative, or just, I think it's going to come out on the positive side, but there's been a lot of focus on fraud, waste, and abuse. And so, as a technology provider, that's both a challenge to us and an opportunity. And so, we're seeing more and more I guess just for those folks at home who might not be super familiar. I mentioned how the money moves, but I didn't really get into it. NEMT 101, you've got federal tax dollars being spent on Medicaid and Medicare. I want to say it's about $2 trillion spent annually by the US government on Medicaid and Medicare. And so then that trickles down to the states, who then need to pick someone to administer a plan. Those states typically pick an MCO, a managed care organization. So that could be like Aetna, Humana, Blue Cross, United, Anthem. We would think of them as insurance companies, but they're technically considered a managed care organization in this case. And they will bid on a request for proposal from the state or from the municipality, which is usually that combination of federal and state tax dollars. And then their job is to, they'll win that population of Medicaid or Medicare recipients. And so maybe it's 1 million folks in the Phoenix metro area that they win a contract for. Then they'll turn around and sell off, 5 cents on the dollar of that will be a new request for proposal that's specifically for NEMT, because United Healthcare or Aetna, they don't want to run their own NEMT fleets. Some of them might, but most of them, that's not their primary line of business. They want to make sure there are practitioners and health clinics and all that taken care of, and all the actual insurance paperwork and all that, call centers. And so they'll outsource the NEMT. And so as the dollars kind of move through there, we're seeing, more of a focus on fraud, waste, and abuse, because it in the past, if you were using, paper 1,500 forms, like if you're trying to get a reimbursement from Aetna, through the federal government for Medicaid or Medicare claims, it would be pretty easy to kind of fake it, And so now, through the advent of technology, I think, being adopted more and more, a lot of what our job is as MediRoutes, is to make sure that our clients have the tools they need, so that the data that proves that they actually picked up a real passenger and actually took them to a real healthcare appointment that existed at that facility. That's kind of what our, breadcrumb GPS would prove, and our signature capture that we have, and other, metadata we have about the trip, and getting that over to, whether it's the NEMT broker or the, the healthcare plan like Aetna directly, in real time is a higher stakes. And so I think there's just been so much focus on fraud, waste, and abuse, and trying to mitigate that. And so we're seeing, just more and more technology adoption in the field. But yeah, that's just one that comes to mind. What are you seeing out there these days, Eric?
Well, for me, one of that conference I went to last November at the TTA Transportation Alliance. That was my first time going back since I was holding the mic in front of you, giving out something.
Oh, no kidding.
In
Okay.
2022. So we left we didn't do anything for about 3 years.
Okay.
So for me, it was a lot of new players,
Yeah.
a lot of technology companies that weren't around 3 years ago, is what I'm seeing.
Good point. Yeah. If I wanted, when I joined MediRoutes, I think I want to say we had 2 or 3 legacy, competitors that were $100,000 implementation. They were really made for paratransit, like state municipalities and all that, to use for whatever it would be, bus systems or rail systems, whatever. And they kind of said, oh, you can use this for NEMT. Or same thing with taxi cab software. They said, oh, you could use it for NEMT. But we only had probably 3 to 4 direct competitors that were NEMT software focused like us at the time. This was 8 years ago. And then, pretty quickly, to your point, I think the last conference I went to would have been, NEMTAC in, I think it was Dallas in 2025, just this last fall.
Yeah.
And I want to say there was about 25 competitors there. And frankly, with the advent of, vibe coding and Claude and Codex and all this AI coding, which is pretty incredible tooling, I'd love to talk more about today. I think we might have 250 competitors next year, and I think some of our clients are going to be, building their own apps. I'm sure they will. And so I think it's cool. You could get freaked out about it, or you could say, this is a great opportunity. There's going to be a lot more competition coming, a lot of code to be cleaned up, a lot of integration work to do. That's to your point. I think as more competitors enter the industry, why is that happening? Well, I think it's getting easier to code. And also I think people are finding out what NEMT is, and they think of it as a potentially untapped, market. Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot of attention.
pop up here in the US. I mean, AI is the big market, buzzword thing, but something like NEMT, they're kind of relatively new. I mean, been around, but in the state it's in now. Like for me, the other observation I had was how many brand new companies were there, like start or people that are like, oh, I just started this up a year or two ago.
Yep.
And we got 2 cars. Some of them have 10 or 12 cars. And so there's a lot of people that are maybe not too knowledgeable what's going on. They're trying to learn. They're trying to I mean, it reminds me a lot of when I first started my taxi cab company. We got our fleet to like 9 vehicles.
Wow,
The
that's
stuff
good.
we had to learn going through that was crazy. And I'm like, man, there's like what, how many, like maybe 10, 15,000 NEMT companies in the country?
That's what they're saying. Yeah. And I think, we, as much as we do love that we are building tools that hopefully help society, healthcare, we also, Steve's a big proponent of entrepreneurship, right? He's an entrepreneur himself. I consider myself to have a spirit of an entrepreneur, even though I didn't start this venture. You know, all of our clients are entrepreneurs. And so some of them, to your point, come from a legacy, a family of entrepreneurs. Honestly, we see a lot of immigrants come over and this is their first, business they start, right? Because maybe the barrier to entry is not incredibly high. You can go get yourself a vehicle and a license. And now legally you are able to, get some certifications, some credentials and register with whoever it is that is, doling out the NEMT trips in your area. So yeah, and I think with the advent of the gig economy too, if you are currently working as a driver, maybe for DoorDash, Uber, Lyft, Postmates, what have you, I think there's some opportunity in NEMT to feel like, no, this isn't just, the techno feudal overlords giving me my little pennies for delivering somebody's fast food. I can actually start my own business, build my own book of clients, and I could actually expand and I can employ my family and my friends and have my own fleet. And so that's, again, not to plug MediRoutes, but that's what our tool helps people do. But really, they're doing the work. And I think to your point, yeah, we're seeing more transportation management software out there, but there's a reason for that. It's because we're seeing more transportation flow through the economy. And we're also seeing more transportation providers and jump right into NEMT. It's a pretty cool time to
Yeah.
be in it.
I mean, at any time where you got a lot of change happening, a lot of innovation, it's always exciting. I mean, that's going back to why did I at 26 years old start a taxi cab company?
Yeah,
At
I'm
least
curious.
have companies like Yelp. And it was because I wanted to get into an industry I could disrupt. And in
Yeah.
2011, Uber didn't exist. There was no apps. You had to hail a cab at the bars on Mill Avenue.
I remember calling him up at 2 in the morning. I said, I'm on the corner of, Congress and 6th that, I was down at U of A. So,
And congrats, you got upcoming March Madness.
oh yeah. Oh man, it's been a wild ride. Fingers crossed, bear down.
But yeah, like the whole scenario of like calling for a cab, we'll let you know in 20 minutes, and like good
Right.
luck if it even shows up. Then that was the world. I was like, this got to be better. And so I actually came up with like 50 pages of my own idea for my own app.
Okay.
And we did have the first app in Arizona in 2012 that you could book a taxi
Really?
well before like any other companies, well before I even heard of Uber. So yeah,
It's pretty legit.
wanted to really get into disrupting things. And that's what I'm seeing now, in the space is all right, there's obviously a need. There's a lot of companies here. I mean, that means probably what there's PE hasn't maybe it's starting to make its way in here now, but like
Sure.
if
Yeah.
there's opportunity, blood is in the water, the sharks start coming.
Yep.
So that means the industry is going to be adapting and changing. Maybe the what might have been easier for someone like an immigrant to come in and start with just on his own might need a couple more resources. And now you're competing against people with $1 billion, in their back pocket.
Yeah, and ironically, I don't know. The competition, I think, on the provider side is still there. The transportation providers themselves, on the fleet side, I think they are competing on prices, unfortunately, and that's where the part when we're talking about how the money flows, and you got your federal money going down to your state, who then gives it to an MCO like that or Humana or whoever. Then they dole out that contract to a broker, and that's MotiveCare, MTM, Vayo, Allevi, Access to Care. There's 50 of these, probably 20 ones you may have heard of, Safe Ride. And so I see that portion of the industry changing because those brokers right now kind of sit in between the managed care organization and the transportation providing fleets who are actually out there doing the work. And,
Middleman.
yeah, it's a middleman thing. And I think in every industry where there's a long-standing middleman, eventually they get kind of chopped at the knees, usually through technology. And so a lot of these brokers are purporting to be, oh, we're we used to be call centers and actuarials, but now we're a tech company. I have my skepticism about how they're going to be able to adopt, and actually become the tech company that the health plans are requiring, right? The health plans are saying, I'm using Uber when I go to a baseball game on the weekend or church or whatever it is. If I can see where my driver's at all times and I know the cost up front and there's pricing dynamically based on demand and, there's safety procedures and credentialing built into this. Like, why am I having somebody in my health plan, call the back of a card and wait on hold like they're back in 2011 trying to hail a cab? So that's where we see, a lot of potential. I do think that's where PE may be coming in to say, what's going on in here? Can we replace the brokers? Are we going to buy a broker? They're very interested in the industry as well. So like I said, if we're doing, yeah, probably this year, 900, maybe $1 trillion worth, or I'm sorry, excuse me, 900 million or $1 billion worth of NEMT. And we've got a lot of competitors. We think we're one of the bigger ones, but there's probably, I don't know, $5-10 billion flowing through this industry is my guess. And so, yeah, curious to see.
There's a lot of pie left.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, your tool is enabling operators to be able to run businesses better, right? And before, because I could imagine, like when I first started my taxi cab company, there was, I don't know, there was no technology, like
You were building.
like I worked with a startup out of Germany that built the dispatch software. And the nightmares I'd have on Friday night when that would go down because it was a startup and it was like they're still trying to, it was brand new technology. But tell me, do you have any stories about like maybe a particular customer that because they latched onto your software, it enabled them to really grow and expand?
Yeah, we kind of, I'm trying to think of a particular client story. Generally speaking, I guess instead of the intro in which you kindly spoke about me, I try to look at the data, as a whole across the network that we support. And what we see is if clients start off, a lot of clients start off with 2 to 3 vehicles. And if you get stuck there, you're probably not going to have a good time. One of the things that we've kind of seen through data is that these clients, when they get started as a transportation provider in NEMT, if you start off and it's you and your cousin and your wife, in my case, and maybe 3 vehicles, that's a tough place to be, right? You're still doing the back office admin work. You're still answering the phones. You're trying to dispatch. You're trying to learn the technology, but you're not really at that critical mass. If you can get up to about 8 vehicles, we call that kind of over the hump in our world, then things start to go very smoothly for you. And those clients that do get over that level are able to grow quite quickly. Specifically for our tool, so I guess that's just more than anything. If you have if you're a listener and you're thinking about starting an NEMT business, or if you recently have, don't quit and try to push through that first, whatever, it could be 3 months, could be a year, where you're at 3 to 4 or 5 vehicles. You're not alone, and it's very hard. And there's a lot of cool resources like Eric's podcast and some others out there. MJ Reliable, shout out to MJ Reliable. They do a lot of good work teaching people the ins and outs of NEMT and getting them ready, to make that jump up to 8 or more vehicles. But aside from that, yeah, once you're using a software like MediRoutes, one of the stories I think was kind of interesting. Alex Stathis is one of our clients out in Chicago, and he's worked with us for, I want to say, he's been a client for at least 10 years. So he's come out to our user conference several times. In Arizona, we do one every spring in Scottsdale. And he told a story that I think might resonate with a lot of people. I was mentioning earlier, when you're in NEMT, you end up getting a lot of phone calls, right? And so I know your business can help people with this as well. But if you're not using something like PackBiz, that can be pretty overwhelming. And so one of the small tools we have that could supplement something like PackBiz, which is outsourced call center, right, where that you're training, those folks are trained. I ask you like I don't know. We use Eric we use PackBiz for the outsourced call center. And it's great. One more shout out to Ariel, who's helped us out for many years. But yeah, if you are just getting going, and let's say you're in MediRoutes, you could use a tool in there called Notifications, and it basically gives that same Uber, DoorDash, Domino's Pizza experience to your passengers that that they're used to with other applications. So what does that mean? Instead of getting 10 calls every morning for, hey, which driver is going to be picking me up today? What time are they? They're late by 3 minutes, right? You can send a hyperlink out you can send a text message with a little link in it. And when your passenger sees a text message, it might say, hey, this is ABC Transport, and click this link to see your vehicle. They'll be there in 45 minutes, right? And they click it, and they'll see, a picture of your driver if you want. They'll see a picture of the car if you want. They'll see your logo if you want. And then in real time, it's showing the driver on the map and kind of saying, they've got 2 stops until they pick you up, right? There's no HIPAA data in there, so it doesn't say they pick up Sally, right? It just says 2 stops, 15 minutes until they're at the location that you were going to be at. So that can be a really helpful tool to kind of give passengers peace of mind as to where they are. I think Alex said that cut down about 60% of his phone calls just by using that.
That's massive. I mean, 60% of phone calls means if you had a team of 10 people, now you only need four.
Yeah, and it's fine. I mean, that when you talk about like evolution of a product, I mean, maybe 10 years ago, that product was simply a robocall out, right? So you could write a script and it would say like, "Hi, Eric, this is ABC Transport. And tomorrow you have a ride at 2 p.m. Like we'll pick you up at 1 p.m. Click 1 to confirm, click 2 to request a cancellation." And it would sound like a robot. You'd know it was a robot and you're probably not going to answer the call anyway. So fast forward after years of working with clients, asking questions, sitting in their operations, learning, what their dispatchers deal with, what their drivers deal with, and what the owner operator needs. They just want to stop hearing the darn phone ring. And so
Yeah.
they're very happy to say, yeah, turn on the notifications thing, automatically send the text a day ahead, automatically send the text day of, and give them the real time geolocation. So that's just a small thing that we think has helped out some operators kind of grow and be able to release, their staff from kind of mindless work and give them some time back.
Yeah, which we at Pactus absolutely support because I don't
Yeah.
want our people doing mindless work. I want us critically thinking. I want us making decisions, having to do stuff that a bot couldn't do.
Yeah.
And if all you're doing, oh, your taxi's almost there, or your NEMT vehicle's almost there, that's not really it's not really doing much. So
Yeah. And you guys can do anything. Your folks are dispatching. I know for us, you guys handle like we call it tier one support. What else are your folks able to do?
I mean, we do, yeah, dispatching a lot for NEMT, like checking with, I believe, oh man, you put me on the spot.
Yes, got him.
There's a lot of coordination with the medical facilities, checking with them, checking with the drivers. So when the drivers need support, we're there to answer. And there's also like when we're picking up from a hospital, there's like making sure we have you talked about all the people that who's the one that's actually paying for the ride. It's not the person in the car.
Right.
And so we need to get the right insurance information. We need to get broker information and stuff like that, so then they could get charged appropriately. Otherwise, they don't get reimbursed, and then they're giving those rides for free. And I want to do that. So there's a lot of data that needs to be collected. So we help facilitate that. And then your traditional calls, checking in. But we work with a lot of medical facilities answering their questions.
Very nice.
Yeah, but thanks for asking.
Oh, of course.
One thing that I always love to talk about on just as being a business leader is mixing your like personal life, the creative side with business. Because a lot of times business leaders, CEOs, you could work like crazy and never see your family,
Right.
never have fun. All you do is work, work, work. I know you have a big creative side as well.
Sure.
So talk to me a little bit about that. What do you do for fun to maybe break out, let go of some steam?
Oh yeah, I think yeah, you and I think we share some hobbies for sure. I know we've seen each other at some Suns games, so that's always a good time. But yeah, I'd like to honestly try to move my body quite a bit. So if I'm occasionally I'll go running, but I play a lot of tennis, hiking. Living here in the desert, it's pretty easy to do. A lot of fun getting on the bike. I started to learn golf, which is like just absolute torture, but very fun. Someday I will, break 90 maybe, but until then, I'll just keep saying I need to buy new clubs, which I won't buy. But yeah, and then probably my biggest passion is music, right? So I'm playing really any instrument that well that I can halfway decently play. So as a kid, I was my parents really both were musicians, and my dad still plays a lot of music with me. And they both instilled in me, hey, you're going to take piano from the age of, I think we were 8 years old, maybe. Took piano lessons for a few years, hated it, but you learn the scales, you learn where your fingers go, you learn some basic music theory. And then, they said, okay, you're 10 now. What instrument would you want to play? So they actually bought me a drum set for my 10th birthday. And it's just a little used kit, just beautiful kit. And so I played that, until I could save up enough money to buy a nicer kit when I was about 18. And I've still been, I've been playing drums the last 25 years. So yeah, really love playing drums. And then from there, you become 15, 16 years old and you see these guys playing guitar and they're getting all the girls in high school. And so I kind of thought, okay, well, maybe I should pick the piano back up. So kind of play that a little bit more and then eventually learned some basics on guitar. So I'm not a lead guitar player by any means, but I can mess around on acoustic. And yeah, so anyhow, that's been fun. I'm currently playing a bass in a psychedelic rock band. So don't ask us our name. We still don't have one. It's only been 6 months and we just lost our synthesizer player. So if you know any synth players, we're on the lookout. Yeah.
His contact information will be in the show. I'll reach out.
Yeah. But yeah, so and I think before we were getting the podcast going, we were talking. We got a little, it's a little garage detached to my backyard, and so that's kind of our jam studio back there, and all the instruments are hanging up, and it's a little mini fridge, and yeah, so we'll go back there and record or just practice different songs, and yeah, it's a good way to get out of the office and do something else creative. So yeah.
And, like how? Because then I mean, you interact with a lot of business leaders, and I'm sure you go to events and stuff. And for you, how important is it to keep that creative side and not get so pulled into the business that you're like, ah, you know what? I'm gonna give it a year or two. We'll focus on the business for now.
Yeah, it's funny. I think, people always talk about work-life balance, and I think it's a nice phrase, and I think it does exist, and you have to find it. But I think there's just, I think of it more like a sine wave. There's just seasons where you're going to be so incredibly in on the business time-wise. So yeah, like when I first started as on the product team, I was just sunrise to sunset, sitting at the office, working on things, thinking about it when I was at home, taking notes, watching, podcasts like this from other people to learn about best practices. And then, once after, I don't know, for me, it was probably 6, 8, 9 months, you kind of get your team together, forming, storming, and all of a sudden you're starting to norm or perform. Then you can kind of take your foot off the gas a little bit, get back to normal hours, get more into your hobbies and all that. Recently with the advent of AI coding, right? I mean, I tried an AI coding app maybe 8 months ago. I was like, yeah, it's not that impressive. It's okay. It's something people would have done in college or right after college, kind of junior level. Well, I was urged by a colleague, went, hey, try it again. So I went in, was trying some newer tools out the other day. Yeah. So probably over the last 8 weeks now, I've been spending 50 hours a week just on that with my team because we are just we've rebuilt our entire dev process. Like reconsidered Scrum and all the fundamentals of that because, the iterative process just changed so rapidly. And so you're almost going back to like a waterfall, more of a requirements design process. So again, now I'm in a season where I'm very heavy into work, but I'm sure in a couple months, maybe over the summer, it'll start to mellow out again. And then you can dive right back into your hobbies. But to answer your original question, I think, yeah, the creative side, the importance of it, and for me too, just getting a sweat in, is I think my team is happier when I'm happier, and I'm a better leader. I think I'm a better servant leader to them. I think I'm a better spouse if I get a little time in the jam room, twice a week, and if I get a little time in the gym or out on the golf course or playing tennis. So yeah, how are you finding a balance these days? I know you've got about 20 things going at all times, business
Yeah.
wise.
For me, I squeeze it in,
Yeah,
um, and it's tough because it's like sandwiched between something else. Like maybe I'm going out of town the next day.
yeah,
A lot of my, for those of you guys that are like really into astrophotography,
yeah.
and so that is, it's not something that you can just go out and do any night of the week.
You don't see stars in the middle of the day. Just kidding.
Well, that's one problem. When
Yeah,
the sun's out, it's a cloudy day today in Phoenix.
yeah.
If it's cloudy, you can't see the stars. If there's a bright moon, so there's
Mhm.
about 2 weeks out of the month that not really good time to go out and do astrophotography. And then like if you go up in July and you look up at the sky in the middle of maybe like 10 o'clock at night, you're gonna have the Milky Way right overhead if you're in North America or Northern Hemisphere. But if you go in the winter, it's not there. And so that's constantly moving and changing. So if you wanted to capture something, so I plan out all my astrophotography trips at the beginning of the year. Maybe there's a meteor shower happening, maybe there's a solar eclipse, lunar eclipse. And so I tried, those are the planned ones. And then there's impromptu stuff, like just going to Sedona and then, oh, we're going to go do a photo shoot. So I squeeze it in, like we'll drive to Flagstaff and I'll scout a place off I-17 somewhere where I could take pictures for like 30 minutes. And my family's used to it now, but it's, let's go pull off into this dark dirt road in the middle of nowhere. And
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, they're used to it. It's an interesting experience. But yeah, I have to cram it in. Otherwise, yeah, it's for me. It's I'm in that busy season right now with my company. So
I also grew up with a photographer in the house, my father. So yeah, same thing. I got dragged out of the house at 4 in the morning sometimes to get up to Sedona so he could, shoot sunrise or whatever it would be. But no, it's a beautiful thing. Do you guys you have your kids like do light painting and stuff when you're out there, paint the rocks with light when you're doing exposures, or have you tried any of that?
I haven't, but I did do some really cool light painting pictures with them. I'll put them up on the screen here so you can see it.
Beautiful.
It was a Christmas parade
Oh,
in
maybe the
downtown Phoenix.
SRP thing or
Yeah,
APS, is
the
it?
APS Festival Lights Parade in downtown Phoenix. So
Okay.
we were right at Central and Camelback Road. Actually, we were right by Camelback Road here, but
Yep.
I had them doing light painting art in the middle of Central Avenue, which is like, when do you get to do that?
Wow.
It's only like once a year. I guess they shut the road down to do that. So I did some with them, which was really cool. But yeah, getting to share creativity with the kids and I mean, it's yeah, with your dad. Oh, I could go on and on with more questions about that. But so we don't make this like a 3-hour episode. I wanted to talk, you started getting into like how things are changing in coding.
Mhm.
And even for you, it's really interesting how you stepped away from, was it vibe coding you were saying?
Yeah, just playing around with Codex and Claude, and Codex didn't exist at the time, so really I was playing around with that Claude through Anthropic, and I thought, oh, this is a pretty junior level output I'm seeing in the code and in the output, and that changed very quickly. Yeah.
So in 8 months, you saw a shift.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, it was just the one. I think it was Opus 4.6 came out. I want to say like February 5th. Not to be doing an advertisement here for Claude, but and Codex had dropped a new through ChatGPT through OpenAI had dropped a new uh, model as well. I think the same week, maybe even the same day. And I swear, some people divide their lives in, the AD and BC. This event happened, but yeah, for our company, I'm wondering for technology in general, I wonder if when those models came out, if it just all of a sudden you can build pretty legitimate business enterprise applications and really give it enough context so it's following your rules, following your best practices, reading through all the, we call them like the wiki, but basically the handbook or playbook for our developers that we built out over the last 8 years. Now our AI is using that to write the code, and it actually is doing a pretty darn good job. We could feed it a 50-page business requirements document, and in a couple hours, it'll churn out at least the front end, a prototype with all the hooks and everything ready to be coded on the back end. So we kind of are, yeah, we're spending a lot of time on that because, well, for a lot of reasons. I mean, one, I think it's making our lives a little more enjoyable as programmers, right? Things are moving so much faster, so that's nice, and it kind of feels like I think heard one quote that I don't know if it's like a snowplow or a Zamboni, but I'm not sure if it matters. But AI is like a Zamboni or a snowplow. You're either in front of it and you're about to get run over, or you're driving the thing. And so that's kind of how we are viewing it. And so we've been all in on it for a little while here, and trying to be thoughtful about not putting AI slop out for our clients, but really using it to make our coding faster, sharper, better. It's doing its own self-testing now, self-documenting. I mean, we have frontline support people writing their own applications now through Claude, and they'll take a call with a client, they'll record it, they'll feed that recording into their own app that they vibe coded with Claude, for example, or OpenAI's Codex, and it'll check our knowledge base to update the knowledge base automatically, and fill in take screenshots. I mean, that's a front end support agent, tier one support.
And they
You know,
created this themselves.
Yes, now they are, full disclosure, living with a programmer, so they've got a little help, but I mean that was an ambitious passion project for that person, and so yeah, I think it's yeah. How have you seen it changing? Because as in a call center world, I got to think you got to feel some risk right now, or I don't know, some changes coming with more AI agents and all this.
Definitely. I mean, for me, I felt the risk 2 or 3 years ago, and that's when we started making changes and pivots, and like, okay, we got to start adapting to what's happening out there. And that's where I really started developing this whole concept of AI plus HI. Like, great, you could let AI do all this stuff, but you still need a human somewhere in the loop, somewhere
Yes.
in the process, and that's where we come in. So, but positioning ourselves, and also how can we take advantage of technology too? So that's why we've been starting to develop our own software on what we know, which is listening to calls. Like we had a QA team of 8 people listening to calls all day long, and now I think it's a team of 2 or 3. And
Wow.
just from last week to this week, actually, the number of calls that tool was analyzing, we were able to get it to double, and so that's a huge change. And because we're not spending so much time listening to calls, we've actually took the supervisors and now they're doing the coaching with
Beautiful.
the agents, and they're getting some of the feedback on where to coach them from the tool. It's analyzing it. Here's what they need to work on. And so it's stuff that was taking hours and days and, like so much manpower. And because I mean, some of the stuff you're saying, like that front end work, or what is able to build out, and what would that have taken 6 months ago?
Yeah, just a ton of time and back and forth. And so, yeah, we're really rethinking like the roles, not getting rid of anything, but just trying to figure out, I feel that IT roles are compressing in a sense. I think for many years, I always joke quickly, anybody that works in IT, anybody that will call you and say, like your grandma will say, hey, can you help me with my VCR? It's like, I guess so, but that's not really what my job is, right? But I'll do it. You're my grandma. And so, but there's this specialization we've seen in IT over the years from, well, that's a database administrator and that's a front end developer. Well, that's a UI expert and that's a UX expert. And they work in tandem, but they're slightly different. That's a business analyst and that's a project manager and that's a, back end full stack. And that's yeah. And so, those specializations, not to say they're going away at all, but as we're able to, take all the knowledge we've learned, document it in like these wikis, or for us, these AI, I call it like the AI factory. I think we're technically coining it AI platform, but kind of this book of rules that you can send something in, and once it comes out of the factory, it's going to adhere to all your standards. And so, with that being true, I mean, there are going to be people working on the factory, putting in their best practices and inputs to make sure the factory is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And then there are people that are going to be putting things in the factory and taking things out of the factory. And so I think that does compress the roles down. In a sense, it allows people to play a bigger role. The single person play a bigger role. So yeah, it's we're seeing a lot of changes there.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I've wanted to get back into. I don't know if you know this. I taught myself HTML when I was in sixth grade, and I used to build websites
No kidding.
before WordPress and all that. And so I have this so I'm so wanting to jump in and like do the stuff you're talking about, but I'm afraid I'm going to get sucked into like down some rabbit hole, and I'm gonna start giving directions to my team. Oh, you got to start doing this. We got to start, which is maybe not a bad.
No, that is a problem. One of the things we are, I jokingly or seriously told you about our front end staff I'm sorry, our person on the front lines as a support agent who built her own tool to help her with her job, which sometimes, if she takes a call and there isn't a knowledge based article, it's her job to create that knowledge based article. Well, she's helped automate that so she can take a next call or take a breather or make a coffee. But it is a problem, and we're seeing it all around. You read about the AI, the advent of AI in these businesses. It's like, how do you sometimes we're making our own tools when other tools exist, and that could be good, that could be bad. Sometimes even relying on, like a Claude Cowork, if you're familiar with that yet. That's anything you do in there, it will do it, but you're going to be spending tokens for infinity for it to spin up the tool that it's being asked to do and produce all that and then bring it back down. Whereas if you just use the Claude code side to actually create the tool and self-host it, you use tokens one time to build the tool, but now you're using your own infrastructure to run the tool. So just the governance of all this, it's like we're on the wild west edge of, it's a new frontier trying to figure out what should the rules be, who's allowed to make apps. Well, we want to encourage everyone to be playing with this stuff. When does an app get used more broadly? And how do we make sure these apps aren't, taking important, whether it's HIPAA data or PHI or even just our own business, information and confidential information, and taking it out of, the right governance. So yeah, lot to learn still.
And I'm sure, as I have seen over the last, we've been really getting in working with AI now for 2 or 3 years. I'm sure you've seen some crazy stuff out there. Being the Wild West, where you're like, whoa, what are you guys even doing with this?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The Claude bot episode, that was pretty funny. I don't know if you saw that. Well, yeah, if you're looking for a rabbit hole to dive down, Google that one, or ask ChatGPT about it. They'll tell you. But
Tell you.
yeah, I feel, yeah, it's just, to me, there's just been this cosmic shift from using the tools to like write something faster, or, even producing this bio. It can help with things like that. It always has been for several years. And then even for code, it would, pass a snippet in, or hey, I'm getting this error, troubleshooting. But now we're starting to have it look at our entire code base, and it's understanding business logic. It's able to build, soup to nuts applications now, which is kind of, yeah, that would have been unheard of. And they don't look like your kid did it in MS Paint. Like they look pretty good, and there's stuff in there you didn't even prompt it to do. You're like, gosh, that's a pretty good idea. So anyway, yeah, we could spend all day on that, but
That's for another future episode, I guess. But I am curious. So, like big picture with AI, I love asking people about like pull out the crystal ball a little bit. hopefully optimistic views, but where do you see the world with everything happening in AI? I mean, it's massive, massive changes, which everyone's talking about. But you're seeing it, you're in it, and so where do you see the world in 3 to 5 years with AI?
Oh man, Eric. Yeah, that's a tough one. A good one. So there's to start in the pessimistic viewpoint, there's a book I was reading over the last, I don't know, month or two called Techno Feudalism. And the guy that wrote it, I think he took over Greeks, he's a Greek guy, and he took over Greece's, excuse me, banking system when they, started defaulting on their
I mean,
credit back, what would that be? Like, I don't know, oh 05, oh 06. I'm not certain on the dates there. Anyway, so pretty good read. And he's talking about this concept of these, we thought after the feudal era, we landed in capitalism. And then the next thing would be even brighter, but it's almost like we're reverting back to a new feudalistic era of these technocrats that kind of own everything and you spend your Bezo bucks and your blah, blah. So so I was reading that while we're kind of getting hit in the face with all this brand new programming stuff over the last few months. That just took a quantum leap, frankly. And it's not like we haven't been playing with it for 2 years, but all of a sudden it's pretty darn good. Full stack software engineers who are 50 years old, have been coding for 35 years, telling me, yeah, I'm not sure I'll ever actually handwrite code anymore. Like I'm just going to be prompting and fixing things and, looking at PRs from a Claude agent. So that's kind of the change we've seen. But anyway, so as I was reading this book and I'm seeing this, play out in front of me, and you hear the guy from, what was it, Jack Dorsey, he laid off like 60% of his staff or 40%, whatever it was, and said in the name of AI. Now we all know Jack Dorsey's probably overstaffed every company he's ever ran, so it could have been that. Uh, Right, right, right. So I do think there is going to be a shift in how people work. But I've kind of, at least myself and our leadership team at MediRoutes and actually the staff that, are in that tool all day with us in the trenches, we have kind of come over the hump of any kind of worries with it. Frankly, we're kind of looking at it as like, gosh, this is a huge force multiplier for us. I do think, for companies that want to get started, like earlier we talked about how there were 5 competitors, maybe now there's 25, and I swear next year there's going to be 250 of them. I think it gives them the opportunity to get started if it's a software company, or in your case, to be able to automate more pieces of the mundane tasks, so that your staff can use their higher level, human brains for higher level human tasks and work. And so I think that's beautiful. And then for some, like a company like ours that is in software, and maybe we feel that we have a bit of a market position, at least, if not a bit of a lead, we think it's just going to accelerate all the roadmap that we've, been looking at, help us squash bugs, help us get more client feedback in real time, help our clients even be able to pretty soon build their own apps, either right on top of us, or within our own ecosystem. And so that's
That's
kind of cool.
amazing is that everybody is so customized. Like every client does these little different processes. So if they could do that and customize it to their broker, their insurance system, their weird things that they have to follow in their state,
Yeah.
then that'll make it so much easier for them.
Yeah, and my hope is that, I mean, so that's just like very micro in our little world and our businesses. But I think on a macro level, I'm pretty optimistic about it. I do. So big picture, zooming out, right? So we spend enough time on our businesses and the little minutia that is going to help us with AI. But yeah, big picture, I'm very hopeful about what it could do for society. I think there's always going to be some fear of displacing a job, or fear of, big brother type oversight. But frankly, I'm also hoping that it's able to solve problems with us, and for us. And so, yeah, I do think it's going to be important for us to be regulatorily minded during this period of time as a society. So that's going to be a challenge, especially on a world scale, because this is not, geographically, confined tools that we are building anymore. So yeah, I'm very optimistic for it. But yeah, we've got a couple challenges to go through as a society.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing that because I really so much out there that's all doom and gloom, and I want people to see that there's a there is an alternative viewpoint, and it's not all like what the headlines are. Because that's what I like the stuff that you guys are able to do today that like 6 months ago wasn't possible.
Right.
Like, what if we apply those same things to some of the problems we have in the world? And that's where I'm like, we don't know it yet. We don't see what's going to happen, but there's some cool stuff happening in the future.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, well, to wind this up here, because thank you again. This has been a great conversation.
Oh, it's
Enjoyed having you on the show. Um,
my pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
yeah, we always end the show with this one question, and it is, with where you're at with MediRoutes. And I mean, we're all pretty young entrepreneurs here. Got a lot of career ahead.
Yeah.
But what's some unfinished business for you? What's something that maybe you're hoping to accomplish in your lifetime? Maybe a big goal or just something with MediRoutes.
Yeah, it's a good question. We see, we've talked a lot about the mechanics of NEMT today and the clients that we serve and all that. I see fundamentally a system that is a little bit broken and needs to be rebuilt. And we think we can play a huge role in that. We think our clients play the biggest role in that. And so we think being able to give our clients the right tools to do that. So what does that look like? I mean, probably eventually we are seeing more pressure from the healthcare, the payers, for them to work directly with a network of NEMT providers to get the absolute best service, right? And they may need to sometimes send a trip to Uber and Lyft if the price is right, or Waymo if there's a level of service that allows that. But we think that the vast majority of those NEMT trips are still going to have to go to transportation providers who are trained and credentialed and have a loving, caring attitude to pick up somebody in a wheelchair and help them get through their door. And so we see kind of a massive shift happening, or the rumblings, beginnings of it. And so I'd like to kind of disrupt the model that's been going on now, where these payers pay a broker and these brokers pay a transportation provider. I think it's a lot of middlemen, and I think the industry would be better served at a lower cost to us as taxpayers if we could directly connect the demanders of NEMT to the suppliers. And so we think we're in a unique position with, I think we got 10,000 NEMT drivers on the road every day, doing 60,000 trips a day, right? So that's kind of, I think Waymo just announced they're about that size. So I think, if we can provide direct access, and that may be through some tooling like facility portals and other functionality that hopefully your call center team will be helping us actually implement. I do see a world where we can lower the cost of NEMT and get the transportation providers paid a more fair wage and get better, more real-time data to the payers. So passengers get there on time, more health plans pay less for it. We save in tax dollars, and the businesses actually doing the work take a bigger share of the piece of the pie. So that's a future I see, and I hope to be able to create that with our team. That's what we're hyper focused on.
That is incredible. I mean, you even included the drivers in it, everybody, the whole group, rising everybody. And so
Hope so.
that's awesome to hear. And I really am excited to see what you guys are able to do with MediRoutes. And so for you guys watching, maybe if you're interested in getting into NEMT, or maybe you're in NEMT and you're like, I need to learn more about MediRoutes. How do people find out about your company, connect with, or if they want to learn more about working with MediRoutes, where do they go?
Oh, I love it. Well, I'll just throw my email in there, david@mediroutes.com. Hit me up. But also, of course, mediroutes.com. We've got folks that just sit there kind of waiting to talk to people about this, right? Most of them are former clients of ours that either, decided to sell their fleet or just, wanted to kind of do a soft retirement. And now they're helping train our clients and really sell the software, get on the phone, explain how it works, and see if it's a good fit for people. But if it's a partner or somebody else that sees that same shared vision out there too, we're all ears. We'd love to talk and love to make new connections like this, Eric. So thanks for asking. It's been a lot of fun today.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you guys all for watching. I hope you guys learned a lot about NEMT and AI and some of what you could do. I mean, I'm learning here in the show right now with David, hearing about some of the stuff. I'm going to go do some vibe coding this afternoon.
Let's do it.
But thank you guys for watching. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe. We're at Biz with Eric on social media, or you could look up Unfinished Business with Eric Mulvin on your favorite podcast platform. You can find us there. And thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys on the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Right.
CEOs and visionaries shaping what's to come, building more than profit, lifting everyone. Every path's unique, but it takes a choice to grow. Set your goals and shape the way your future goes. Unfinished business, where people in tech connect to amplify. Unfinished business, human intelligence plus AI. Unfinished business, moonshot goals that launch you high. Unfinished business, listen close and you'll learn why. Subscribe, look for Biz with Eric online, and follow Unfinished Business. business on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you listen.